All right. I'd like to lead now into our next panel, and some of you met yesterday was Sinead Finn. Sinead, as many of you know, is from Affinity, but in her previous life worked for another small Irish airline called Ryanair, and was in charge of all those things, all this whole ancillary activities that were going on there. And as we know, Ryanair is one of the leaders in this area, and along with Flybe and others, pushed the boundaries and started doing things that were deemed really, really controversial at the time. And nowadays you see Air France and BA and Lufthansa doing all these things that were, heretical at the time. So really, really as somebody who's led change, and she continues to do innovative change now behind the scenes, both at private equity and in continuing to develop people's ancillary business. So I'll let Sinead introduce her panel and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Okay, so we've got quite a hot topical discussion next, because it's in personalization, and airlines still have quite a bit to go in this area. Our objective with our time here today is to share some of the thinking around delivering a personalized experience for the digital traveler across different platforms. But just before I introduce the panelists, I just have a question for the audience. And you can just give a show of hands, but are any of you, so put up your hands, who is for personalization and people knowing more about you and being able to deliver you the right product at the right time as a result? Yeah, great. Okay, that's good. That's really good. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our panelists now. So first of all, we have Mike Rutter, who you've just heard speak. And I know David has given Mike a great introduction, so no need to do that again. Then we have Jacob Guerra, who is the Senior Manager, Marketing Systems, E-commerce and Merchandising, quite a mouthful, for United Airlines. And Jacob has been in the airline industry now for 5 years. He worked at Continental before United. But what I love about Jacob is every time I meet him, he's always happy and smiling, and he gets these really crazy flights and comes straight into these conferences, and he still has a great smile. So next is owner Deda Kalu, Vice President Marketing from Pegasus Airlines, and owner was previously at Coca-Cola. And last week I was in owner's offices in Istanbul, and the one thing I noted was that he and his ancillary team were the last to leave the building. Well, actually, they hadn't left it when I had left it. So clearly he's got everybody working hard for him on the ancillary side, which is great to see, so watch out, other airlines. Next is Greg O'Gorman, and Greg is Head of Ancillary Revenue and Partner Marketing at EasyJet. Greg has been 4 years at EasyJet, and previously he was with Expedia. And finally, we have Mark Lenihan. Mark is Vice President of Product Strategy at OpenJaw Technologies. He has 23 years of IT experience, and he has 17 years of experience within the travel industry. But the one thing I've noticed since knowing Mark about Mark is if you want something done properly, Mark will do it properly. So I'd like to invite all our panelists up here, and we'll get the session started. Okay, so my first question is to Jacob, actually. And I'm just, personalization, I mean, have airlines got it? Have they arrived? Look at Amazon. Is it comparable? Incomparable?
Well, I wanted to revisit your opening poll of the audience. I don't think we're a very representative sample of the public. And it's a question that you get different answers depending on who you're asking the question and how you phrase the question. Because if you say, how do you feel about company knowing more about you? Nobody raises their hand. Says, no, I don't want them to know more about me. But you ask them, hey, what if you want something special targeted just for you? Oh yeah, give me that. Give me that, I want that. How many times do you go to the supermarket or to any one of these retailers that has a loyalty program that says, oh, do you have a loyalty card with us? I said, no, but what do I get? Everyone wants to know what they get for participating. and everybody goes on the Facebook and tries out those apps, and you have to accept to give your data to Facebook and to the third party. And everybody accepts. Very few people decline. So everybody wants something, and they're willing to trade personal information for it. And so have airlines got there yet? Not quite. Customers speaking to us every day, but are we listening? I think that's some of the areas where airlines still have to focus on, whereas somebody like an Amazon is listening, where Google is listening and responding, where airlines are not yet to that point.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Mark, I'd like to hear your perspective on Amazon and airlines.
Well, I mean, I think the question I'd ask people in the audience, maybe we do another show of hands, is put up your hand if you're happy with Facebook and Google knowing the amounts of stuff they know about you. No hands. So there's a counterpoint to all hands on one hand and no hands on the other. You know, I think the Amazon question comes into, you know, stuff like recommender systems. Airlines compare themselves to Amazon quite a lot. And for sure, if two different people log into Amazon, they'll see two different things. It's true one-to-one marketing based on your past behavior, your current shopping cart. But also it's based on collaborative recommendation systems. Collaborative recommendation systems in the original model that Amazon implemented are as dumb as a bag of hammers. They don't care if you're buying a book or a DVD. They just know that product SKU1 is associated to SKU 117 to X number of customers. You can't sell travel products that way, okay? There's a lot of rules, most related to location and time and space, that you can't sell a hotel in one country when you're flying to a different country. So travel systems have to be a lot more intelligent to produce rational offers and consistent itineraries. And your basic e-commerce platforms don't do that, and your collaborative recommendation systems don't do it either. But you know, something that's a hybrid of collaborative and rules-based and behavior-based is something that actually has a lot of promise for the travel industry.
Greg, I'd like to hear your comments on Mark's feedback.
Yeah, well, I think you know, airlines probably do themselves a bit of a disservice, actually, in how far we've really come, actually, with personalization. I think we have actually, certainly speaking from the EasyJet perspective, we see ourselves as a retailer. We're in the digital space, and we do already quite a bit of personalization, but we don't really showcase it or talk about it, I think, maybe as much as other markets and other industries. So just looking at ancillary revenue for a moment, particularly with, say, travel insurance. If you come to the EasyJet website, we already real-time make some decisions about what segment that you belong to, and we then serve you up some products according to what your segmentation will be and what your preferences look like. And I think you know, we as long as there's good theory behind it, and we you know, before we put anything live, we'll always undertake quite a bit of strenuous MVT, multivariate testing, to ensure that there is incremental profitability, etc. And once we see, yes, we can see a commercial upside, we've got no problem with releasing that type of technology. So I think that we probably downplay what we already have. Certainly from an EasyJet perspective, we've moved from being sort of batch and blast and one size fits all to very much being a lot more personalized and sort of moving things on.
And Greg, are you able to make that work through all the different platforms? So that level of detail in travel insurance, have you put that across all of the channels?
Well, we so you know, it won't be a surprise to you to know that we're very sort of commercially focused, obviously, at EasyJet. So that targeting and personalization capability, we really do take through to lots of different platforms. So if you look at our CRM, for example, we used to have a one-size-fits-all. So everybody used to get the same pre-departure communications. everybody used to get the same offers, and it was pretty bland, it was pretty unengaging. But what we've now done through our CRM, email CRM program, is we identify exactly who you are, so we personalize our communications to you. We offer you services, add-on services, whether they are flight-related or other ancillary services, which are for the dates that you're traveling, the destination that you're going to, with accurate pricing, sort of really compelling offers. And the results have been amazing. So, I would say, whilst we look to Amazon, there is actually a lot that we're already doing that we probably set ourselves slightly short on already in the industry. And I'm sure as we kind of look across, United and Aer Lingus, we've kind of got our own examples as well. I'm sure with Pegasus, for where we're already doing some great stuff.
Ona, just taking that, I suppose, a few steps further, the personalization piece. Are you looking at social proofing? So that would be similar to what Booking.com does, where advice is given at various different parts of the booking. I mean, is something like that in project that you're looking at, and also guest reviews, etc. and so forth. Can you?
Yeah, we're not doing that at the moment, but it's one of the areas that we're definitely working on. I think the main difference between Amazon and some other companies like Amazon and the airline sector is the fact that they brought in a new business model and they targeted a one-stop shopping from the very beginning. So that means actually being able to get great product information, access all sorts of product categories and products and all brands, reliable delivery, reliable customer service, as well as reliable customer feedback, so social proofing. So they made this part of their business model from the very beginning. They didn't want people to go to Google and search for product reviews on Google or product information on Google. So that makes Amazon actually sort of a competitor of Google as well. They're not only competitors of other e-commerce businesses. So we as airlines need to do two things to me to create this change. One is change of mindsets. So we all need to go through a change management process. The second thing is obviously all the technical requirements, which takes a little bit of time. I would say these sorts of things take a lead time of 1 to 2 years, depending on how quickly you act. But the earlier you start, the better. And I think we're not really in the sector talking about real customer feedback, passenger feedback, and reviews at the moment for about the service that we provide, about the services that our third-party suppliers are providing. I think that's something that we will be starting talking about as well. Why don't people get other passengers' feedback on a meal that you provide on board on the website before they decide to purchase, to pre-order the meal for their next flight? That's something that we need to be thinking about. That's what Amazon is doing.
Thank you for that. Just, Mike, talking about different platforms, one of the things that actually struck me about your presentation, which I really enjoyed, by the way, was the distribution piece and how that seems to have radically changed. And I was really struck by the wearables, and I was just wondering, are you ready for Apple Watch?
I don't think anybody's ever ready for something that completely changes the mindset in the same way as the industry wasn't in any way ready for the smartphone change and has spent 2 to 3 years trying to catch up as those platforms have taken the way which we transact, interact, have a guest experience throughout the whole of the customer journey. And what struck me from the conversation that we've just been having as it speaks to this particular topic is to truly get to a personalization platform, people have got to want to give permission to trade that information. And the only way that they will give that permission to trade that information is if it's used to create a guest experience which is personalized. It's different for Amazon because their experience, your guest experience of Amazon, begins and ends with the transaction that you have, and then hopefully that the product meets the expectations as it was sold. You know, we take people on a 12, sometimes 24-hour experience. So the data that they have to trade to us has to actually be completely inculcated into the guest experience to allow people to do that. And there are very few of us, you know, and I include ourselves in that, who've managed to find that ability to trade it off. At the moment, we're trading it off purely for the ancillary revenue upside, which obviously is important to our bottom lines. And you know, as somebody who's heavily involved in creating the ancillary train set we all play with today, you know, I have no issue with that. But for it to truly work, to be truly personalized, it then has to follow the guest through their experience as they go through their interaction at check-in, their interaction at the gate, their interaction in the seat. It has to work its way through. Then personalization data will be traded very, very willingly by our consumers. And I think that, to be honest, is going to be the major hurdle that we have to get over.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that goes back to what Owner was saying about, you know, in the cabin and right down to the meals, just understanding the customer. But I was just interested to hear as well from you, Owner, just about mobile, because it strikes me that it seems to be, because there's not as much space as there would be on desktop, it strikes me that it's actually more difficult to offer a personalized experience on mobile. Do you agree, disagree, or do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, mobile has got some limitations, obviously, and definitely developing, progressing behind the world of the web. But mobile has got the advantage of being with you all the time, as we know, and being a very personal item, being with you until the last moment that you turn off your mobile phone on board. That will, I guess, make us think of different sorts of personalization. With mobile and with things like Apple Watch, I think the airline sector as well as other sectors are going to think about more intimate and emotional way of building a relationship, offering personalized services to people. Apple Watch is already giving some features to the app developers in this area. It's a very intimate thing, and that's, I think, where we need to start thinking. Instead of trying to sell items, sell ancillaries on Apple Watch, I think the focus should be trying to build a emotional and intimate relationship with the passenger.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Jacob, can I have your views?
Well, I think we have a lot that we still have to wait and see on the Apple Watch. I think we've seen the initial announcement, but as you know, it's not available for order. It's coming next year, and so we're going to be seeing a lot more development. You see some of the news articles this week about the different major medical institutions trying to do experiments and proof of concepts with the Apple Watch. So we'll see what is it that's really going to be the driver of the popularity of the Apple Watch. I think Apple has a niche of being able to find things that are conveniences to the user and really make them a part of our daily life. Now, if you ask me what time is it, I'm going to pull out my phone and check because I don't wear a watch. And so now that customers don't wear watches, they're going to introduce a watch. And now they're going to take care of that for you. You'll be able to check your mail. You want to send a text. You want to send a smiley face to somebody on the watch. You can send it over now via the wearable. So customers now are going to expect us to be everywhere. Not too long ago, in the last 5 to 8 years, customers didn't really have that expectation yet because the technology was new. But now, customers should expect whatever comes to the market, you better be in that space. I have our CEO that contacts us and say, hey, what are you doing for this new technology? What do we have? And there's an expectation that we were already working on something now, which is a different story than it was just a few years ago where you're going to your finance department come and justify the different technologies that are coming out and say, hey, we should play in this. And so it's a very interesting part of the, I guess, time to be in the airline industry where we need to be everywhere for the customer. And personalized. we use the analogy that customers want different things on different platforms. And so a lot of us who commute in major cities, a lot of us live, whether it be in London or Chicago or the major metropolitan cities, sit on the train for an hour or more commuting into work every day. And customers, and you see the fellow passengers on their phones, on their tablets, researching, especially in the Chicago cold or in the cold here in London. Hey, where can I get out of the city? Where can I get to somewhere warmer? They're researching. Then they get home, and did you remember what they were researching on their tablet when they've switched to their laptop computer or to their desktop computer? Those are the types of personalizations that we really have to be good at, and that's what's really, I think, where Amazon and some of these other ones excel at, is making sure that you have a nice cross-platform experience. But Amazon also has a very big sort of instantaneous gratification factor that the travel industry doesn't offer. Now with Amazon Prime, you can have something at your door even same day if you want. And I think that's a bit different challenge at the airline. You made the point that there's not an equivalency here to the airline industry yet, and I think that's one of the big factors. That's why check-in still continues to be a very high revenue channel for most airlines, because it's very impulsive. People hear that crying baby in the lobby and say, ooh, I'll take that first class upgrade, or I'll take the premium economy upgrade, because there's a lot of impulse. There's instant gratification at the airport where there isn't necessarily in the pre-purchase process.
I just want to, I suppose, ask you, Jacob, about the flight and gate paging. That's still part of United's offering, right? The flight and gate paging solution, is it? This is the text message that tells you if your gate has changed or delays. Because I worked on that years and years ago. So I was thinking about wearable, especially the smartwatches in particular. In one sense, they're enhancing the user experience on the mobile phone. And they're also making some pre-existing technology like SMS messaging more convenient. So if you did want to see, United application on an iWatch or a Samsung smartphone, just subscribe to flight and gate paging, and people would be in the airport able to see their gate number on their smartwatch. So it's relevant to some of the prior work that you and other airlines have done as well. The other thing I'm worried about with the smartwatch and the wearable in general is that there's an association with the watch and the smartphone. You're going to end up with a very high percentage of people, market penetration on smartphones, because it's very hard to buy a non-smartphone. But you're only going to get a percentage of those people wearing additional wearables that are plugged into the smartphone. So you still have to design a solution for people who are working with, with or without the wearable tech associated with the phone. So I think the focus should be initially on the phone, and wearable is like the Virgin example, in an environment where you can control. If your staff are using wearables, you can actually buy the wearables for them, and you can standardize on that. I don't know if you guys disagree with me, or you think it's worth doing consumer apps for wearables?
Greg has begun.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with the looking at the penetration really of the device, because like Jacob was saying, like you were saying, yourself, Mark, every new technology that comes along, we're not just going to down tools and race ahead with all of our resources, building something ready for that kind of next wave of technology. I think it's a little bit like iBeacons as well. So, we've got to look at what the uptake and the penetration of it is going to be. Again, sort of with a commercial head on our shoulders, we've got to look at, what's the payback on it going to be. So, wearable technology, it's got quite a lot of dependencies. Obviously, the preferred device has to be purchased first of all, then push notifications need to be enabled, etc., for it to really be able to deliver benefits at the airports. But there could be some benefits like communicating your gate, or communicating flight disruption, or pushing some sort of ancillary message, or even your mobile boarding passes. So all of that capability is there. That can be delivered through wearable technology, no problem, in the same way it is through smartphones today. But I think the big question really is, what's the uptake on this going to be before it can be really commercialized? So I think we have to, I think we just have to see what the commercial opportunity this is going to be before we can race ahead.
Okay, I think, Owner, you had...
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think this is one new area that the airline sector has got the chance to actually experiment with all the other industries. We're all talking about the fact that we've been behind the mobile technology, we've been behind social proofing and all the other new technologies that the other e-commerce sectors have gotten into much earlier. And this is one new area that we should start experimenting along with all the other industries. And plus, I think the way we should experiment is to try to find the areas, the moments where it's more relevant for the traveling people. For instance, the sector could focus on the actual travel moments, especially for leisure travel, where we know passengers stay a bit more away from their emails, might stay away from their mobile phones, and that might be a chance for the airline sector to actually create that connection through the wearable technology and create really cool and helpful stuff for the passenger, rather than trying to provide so many things for the other moments. Maybe we should focus on certain moments that are relevant to the travel.
Yeah, to that particular customer, yeah, because they don't want to be offered everything, just exactly what is key to them.
Yeah.
Thanks, Oner. Mike, for you, I just want to understand. I mean, when we talk about technology providers, for example, I mean, do you find that technology providers are assisting you or giving you what you need in order to affect change in the area of personalization and move forward? Or are you moving at a quicker pace than they're able to keep up with, or is it the other way around?
Well, first of all, a comment on the iWatch. I've seen all my sci-fi movies. I know everybody wears personalized wearable outcomes. I believe them, so I will be investing heavily in the area because it was in Star Wars. So that's pretty simple, and that's going to be the outcome. With regard to the technology play, I think our desire to move ahead has traditionally moved faster than the technology capability in the space to be able to keep up with it. The reason for that is less about the technology's ability to keep up, but the technology's ability to interface with the legacy platforms which we have around the piece. And I'm not going to go through the kind of whole NDC debate that sat through the panel beforehand. But throughout in Sinead, we were competitors for many years as well. I was always running a cycle of key ideas, either around personalization, retailing, ancillaries as they were known, in a cycle of 18 to 24 months before the technology was allowing me to be able to deliver it in a way that was acceptable in an omni-platform environment. I'd wanted to do baggage in 2003. And it took us till 2005 to actually be able to get a system that would actually work from that perspective. And similarly, with that need to be able to speak, particularly in the business model that we have, which have many different vertical segments within it, to be able to make it holistic, and you can't be 100% holistic, but holistic, the technology partners have largely let us down in that regard. And the putting into the value chain of additional oligopolies on top of those that we have in the airline, the aircraft production, the oligopolies that we have in distribution, is part of the messed up value chain, which gives us the problems that we have. And that's why we welcome NDC, at least in its aspiration, to be able to break part of that oligopoly apart.
Thanks for that, Mike. Greg, can I have your views on technology providers, and are you finding that?
Yeah, so I think linking it back to the social proofing and the ratings and reviews, sort of from a technology, putting a little bit of an ancillary sort of a slant on it again. What we tend to do is we tend to partner with technology companies who are great retailers, really. So if we look at, say, Booking.com, for example, they would be kind of leaders in the field for ratings and reviews and social proofing, etc. So we do choose our partners who drive ancillary revenue, who've got high technology capabilities and really strong retailers. So we're taking the personalization through some of the booking engines that we plug into to EasyJet website. And also, if you look at how we can monetize that as well. So some of our technology partners who power, say, the advertising on our boarding passes, again, that is sort of leading edge technology in terms of personalization. So again, they're taking all the key parameters that we can pass through and serving up personalized adverts, whether it's a car rental company in Spain that wants to target an audience inbound into Spain, or but whatever it might be. But essentially, we choose our partners and our technology providers as those who are kind of at the cutting edge, really, in terms of retailing and social proofing and reviews and ratings. So it's high up there for us in terms of our priority. I'm sure all the technology companies, we've all got the same goals in mind, and I'm sure we look to a lot of what the guys in United are doing as well. I know that they're very sort of innovative in terms of the technology. There's quite a few technical innovations that we sort of watch from afar, and I'll hand to Jacob now. Maybe Jacob can kind of give us his steer on some of the technology providers that you're working with at United too.
Yeah, I think the momentum is changing. I felt, 3-4 years ago, you had to push technology providers and say, here's an idea, and let's see what we can do to enhance the space or enhance the system or work with those legacy systems. We were one of the first to provide live standby lists of the airport. So we have all the people wanting to stand by for a flight, and you can bring it up from your mobile app or from the website. Well, the standby list changes so often. A gay agent working in the native mainframe can change that list on the fly, that you have to call the mainframe every time to get the answer or the list. So that was sort of our first, hey, how do we start abstracting and make these old legacy systems high volume and high frequency use? And so nowadays, the providers are used to this concept. Hey, let's figure out how we can get there. I think the last presentation earlier today said XML is not a new thing. It's been around for a while, but airlines haven't really adopted it as much as they should. And now that everybody is speaking XML, it's just the common term. It's not a foreign concept when you work with technology providers anymore. So I think it's in a good place. And if you're not doing it, somebody else is going to do it for you, which I think is, back to the topic that we're discussing. Having personalized content extends not just to direct channels, but indirect channels, and that's where sort of the NDC component plays in. If you have your 50% of your customers who are corporate and not booking direct, they still expect that same personalization, even in those indirect channels. And I think that's where the industry is sort of moving now to say, how do we get that content and speak to them properly in all the different places?
Owner, I just want to thank you, Jacob, for that. I just want to go back just quickly to ancillaries and just to understand, do you look at some of your partners in ancillaries, for example, such as Car Trawler, who are equally as advanced as Booking.com in terms of social proofing, and I believe they have an innovation team that pushes really hard and works really hard to bring into play all the new ideas. Would you look at some of your ancillary providers and actually learn? Are there key learnings you could learn from them that you can put into your own system as well?
Yeah, I think we need to work on that. It's not an area that we're working on at the moment, but we're working with Booking.com, and we need to learn from them and install into our system, so pass that information on to our passengers as well. Car Trawler has been another partner that we started working with. I think we're sort of dealing with the fundamentals at the moment, while building our capabilities on the technology side. We're working on the technology, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean we're not doing it, but we have a lead time of like 6 months before we see some of the results in our contact points. But we think the critical thing about ancillaries, especially like third-party ancillaries, is to provide variety, to provide quality, and to provide low price, especially for low-cost airlines. So We decided to work with a partner like CarTraveler, for instance, because if, as a low-cost carrier, we're talking about giving people the option to choose whatever they want, if we're talking about low prices, if we're talking about, giving people the option to choose whatever product they wanna go with, then we should really be offering multiple brands, multiple products, multiple price points in the car rental business as well. Similarly, we're looking into destination entertainment area in this way. Hotels is another area that we're looking into. We're working with Booking.com on certain developments. A big part of the ancillary development is, to me, building the right relationship with the right people for the long term, while building your capabilities on the technology side to be able to market your products a lot better. This is where we are at the moment.
Thanks, Una. Yes, Mark.
Yeah, I just wanted on the retailing technology, I suppose I'd have a word of warning. Michael was talking about the big oligopolies in airline technology and legacy technology in particular. One of the problems with those companies is that there's a conflict of interest there. On one hand, they're providing the mission-critical reservation systems for the airline, and on the other hand, they're running a separate business line with the same technology as a distributor. Now, the airline industry, we have to be careful, I'm saying we, I suppose you have to be careful not to replace that problem with another equivalent problem. And the other equivalent problem would be to say, I'm moving into retailing, so I'll just take the retailing technology of a travel retailer. The problem with that is there's another conflict of interest. That technology company may be competing with you on other channels for customer acquisition. So if they're a company that's also going to sell hotels and you're going to sell the same hotels for the same price, it gets you in the door very quickly, but it's not retailing until you have a differentiated product. So I think there's a point in your evolution you have to come to where you have to say, if you look at someone like BA Holidays, they do use wholesalers. They also directly contract, okay? And that gives them a very differentiated hotel product. There's a bigger business investment to be able to do that. It's not just a technology investment, but they're not dependent upon the type of offerings who are actually competing in a B2C channel at the same time. So they're a wholesaler in one arm of the business and they're a retailer in the other.
Just a quick answer to that. I agree with you, and I really like what BA is doing in their flight and hotel business. But I believe we need to be quick in doing what we're trying to do. I think the airline sector has looked at the sector and the services they provide more focused on the flight and anything related to the flight. Yes, we've been offering hotels. Yes, we all had some car rental business partners, etc., which are the obvious things. But we haven't been looking at the other aspects of the travel experience, like entertainment, like car parking, like all the other things for so many years. And these are the new areas that we are looking at. And I think airline sector has got the key advantage of being the sort of the gatekeeper, so the starting point for travel planning. That's very crucial. I think the more we get the travelers, passengers, plan for all aspects of their travels on our websites, so become a real travel company, travel retailer, rather than an airline company, the better. And I believe in a few years' time, airlines who are able to do this are going to be making half of their revenue from other aspects of travel other than just flight revenue. that's a very unique advantage that the airline sector has got, and we're not utilizing that. And in order to do that, yes, like BA, we need to have our direct contracts with hotels as well as working with a consolidator. But the starting point is definitely going to be working with a consolidator immediately, providing good service and technology to the passenger, while working with providing some differentiation, some unique proposition through more detailed, deep thinking and work, which might happen in a few years' time.
Okay, thank you, Onur. I'm just wondering, are there any questions from the audience? So we have a few minutes. Come on, there has to be a question. No? Okay, I just have a sort of, I'd like to understand a little bit more about personalization around, maybe this is a question for you initially, Mike, but CRM and loyalty. And, you know, obviously, you know, are you treating that a little bit differently? Obviously, you're getting more information about that customer, so obviously that enables you to do more with that customer on the personalization piece. I was just interested to hear how that affects.
I think it's a spot-on question. I think if me and you had been here, and as we were at previous conferences, you know, back in the day, 5 or 6 years ago, somebody we both know well would have been describing, you know, something that begins with an F in points, and you know, there's no way that'll ever be within the model of a value carrier or otherwise. You know, I think the reality is that if you are going to have a personalized relationship with a customer, you have to recognize them, and to recognize them, you have to provide the touch points in the journey where you personally recognize them. You have to recognize their importance to you within your business, their loyalty. And to do that, you have to recognize that the overall funnel of conversion in airlines means it's much cheaper to retain people within the franchise than it is to go off and recruit more of them. And then on top of them, you have to find a way of rewarding them for choosing within their tight wallet spend to direct their spend towards your activities to make it work. So almost going back to the link in the original presentation, you know, my view is you will see as this value carrier model merges pretty much across the piece, and as personalization becomes the outcome, you know, you will see some pretty solid recognition, loyalty, and reward programs being generated by even those whom before, maybe 5 or 7 years ago, would have decried them as, you know, the antichrist of LCC activity. And you know, that's certainly where Aer Lingus is going. You know, we will make some fairly major announcements about changes in loyalty recognition and reward. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if there are some others who follow on, not that far behind.
Greg, do you have any views on the loyalty piece and how it's helping your personalization and understanding more about your customer?
Yeah, so I think you know, one of the key things to take loyalty back to is getting high levels of customer satisfaction, and I think you've got to be pretty single-minded and focused about that. So it's understanding what matters to customers in the customer journey, and it's both online and it's well, it's even more so. So that's the booking experience, which is part of it. But even more important is the service delivery through the airport. So it's the bag drop, it's a check-in, it's the boarding experience, it's the in-flight experience, it's the friendliness of service that's being delivered. You get that right, and then you've got your customer satisfaction scores, and that's growing and that's going in the right direction. That's your first step in loyalty, really. So I think remembering the service side of things before we get too sort of heavy on the technology and sophisticated with you know, frequent flyer programs or loyalty benefits and reward and recognition. I think that's the best reward and recognition that you can give your customers, is delivering a good service. So I think it's a kind of a word of sanity to sort of bring it back to the basics. whilst we like to be very commercial about looking at new products and new innovations, getting the service delivery right in the first place, I think is very important.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something on the loyalty. Considering frequent flyer programs are loyalty programs, if you consider as an airline that a frequent flyer program is a marketing cost that you can live without, you don't understand loyalty programs. You know, I'm 100% confident that Mileage Plus, for example, earns more revenue than it costs by several orders of magnitude. If you have scale, first of all, loyalty programs actually earn you significant revenue through the sale of points. But then there's the data point that Michael and you were making as well, Greg, that, you know, you want to make identification simple at all of the touch points, but you also want to make it desirable. You want the customer to present their identity. So at every touch point integration, the fewer touch points they're anonymous at, the better the quality of data that you have about their behavior. Behavior data is far more valuable than profile data in the long run, right? And that's another thing that, you know, a loyalty program does, is it encourages people to identify themselves, you know? So I suppose the third value of the loyalty programs in general is the cost of customer acquisition is high. You know, you could end up in a bidding war for an AdWords, or bidding against the OTAs on the meta search. So you've got that cost of customer acquisition. Now that you have the product, you want the customer to come directly back to you, and a loyalty program drives that. So there's really a lot there from the personalization angle and from the revenue angle. You know, I do think that other airline is probably going to do something in that area. That's my prediction.
That's your prediction. Half crazy prediction for the next. I think on that note, we have to wrap up. It's time for lunch, which has been very kindly sponsored by Holiday Extras. Okay, so enjoy and clap for my thanks.